want Big Daddy! We want Big Daddy!
Welcome to the Leading While Bleeding podcast with Robert A.
First, we gotta get in our dad joke for the week. What do you call, ladies, if you're listening? Give that man a hug. I know you feel the pain right now, but you gotta keep going.
Real and authentic growth each and every Monday.
I love you, Dad.
What's up, everybody, and welcome to the Leading While Bleeding podcast. I'm your host, Robert A., where we have real and accountable talk each and every week to remedy our wounds as we lead so we don't bleed on those all around us. Be sure to like, subscribe, and tap in on whatever platform you prefer to listen to. Let's dive in. So I wanted to air an interview that was really interesting and had a really interesting perspective that I was eager to share with you all. But coming off the topic of our first episode, which was surrounding grief, I thought it was only right to talk about where to go from that point of grief. Before we get into the episode, I want to acknowledge some of the comments that we had on our first episode. I Grieve Different. It was an introduction to the podcast and it's gotten a lot of positive attention, and I just wanted to highlight a few of those for the viewers and listeners. So the first one is from Kyle from Maryland. Kyle said, "That was great, brother. It couldn't be any more important for us as men to take care of ourselves. If you aren't taking care of yourself, you can't take care of the ones you love effectively. It's a balancing act and a dance of regulation of emotions and state of mind. I saw a lot of my own struggles in the things you were talking about. I had a really hard time when I got out of the Army finding healthy ways to cope and have come a long way through trial and error." Kyle, thanks for sharing and thanks for listening. Thanks for contributing your experience. I know it's something that's not easy, but this community is something that's here to support you, and we're here to grow together, and we appreciate having you along as a listener. Thank you for contributing. Next, we have Shady, a co-host from the Rudely Honest podcast. And Shady said, "Grief is such a tricky thing to navigate through, especially when you can't predicate when the stages will hit you. This was an informative listen. I'm glad you're finding a healthy outlet as you navigate through your own grief." Thank you, sis. I appreciate you. And you know this journey is something that's very near and dear to me and always has been. And it's been helpful. It's been helpful to be able to stick to a schedule, to be able to maintain the podcast and put my energy and time into more productive things. So thank you for that comment. Next, we have Robin from Florida. Robin said, "Enjoyed this episode and looking forward to more." Thank you, Robin. We appreciate you listening. And next, we have Jennifer from Pennsylvania. Said, "Love the strongman description at the beginning. Great way to set the stage." Thank you for noticing, Jennifer. I'm not new to storytelling. Just to give a shameless plug, I do recommend that anyone that plans to follow this podcast long term, go check out my first book as a foundation for this. The title of it is called Fertile Concrete. You can find it in the link in the description below. And it is offered for free on Kindle. So Jennifer, thank you for your comment. Lastly, we have Derek from Fort Wayne, Indiana. He said, "Robert A. was on fire with this one." He said it, not me. He had so many real points for me, and I'm sure you can relate. Thank you for Derek for your comment, and thank you for sharing the video, and thank you for taking the time to acknowledge that the things that I was speaking on was relatable to you, because that really is my main intent. And thank you to all the listeners that did not have the time to comment. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe to this podcast so that we can build a community together, because collectively I think we all have something that we can add that we can benefit towards one another. So before we get into this week's episode, we have our segment of the dad joke of the week. Last week's joke will give our answer this week, and that joke was, "Why did the Scarecrow win an award?" Now, I'm pretty disappointed because nobody even tried in the comments this week. You really hurt my feelings. However, this is a really funny joke. And the answer to that, why did the Scarecrow win an award? For his outstanding service. If you're not laughing, then you're lame, and that's a shame. So the joke for this week. Why did the golfer bring 2 pair of pants? Why did the golfer bring 2 pair of pants? Leave your answers in the comment this week, and let's see if anybody can get the answer. Alright, let's dive in. So this episode is titled Please Forgive Me, and it's because we're approaching forgiveness from 2 different positions. One being forgiveness of ourselves, but one of them is a different type of forgiveness that I think we all can benefit from. You ready? Fathers, dads, men, it is imperative that you ask those kids, that family, whatever the dynamic you have, that you ask them for forgiveness.
What did you say? What did you say?
Wait. Before you turn this off, get your finger off that button, because I have a story that I think will resonate with you. So when my oldest son was 3, I had 2 kids at the time. My daughter was 5 and my son was 3. And their mother and I were going through a separation. And when I would pick my kids up, my son never wanted to come with me. This is my junior, y'all. Fast forward to a point in life where I had lost everything behind how I chose to grieve some things, including a pending divorce, which y'all get the tea on later, but I don't know y'all like that yet. But I got into a point where I had to bike over 10 miles one way just to see my kids. One day I pulled up on the bike, drenched in a sweat, just to spend a few hours with them, but my son wouldn't come down. He said he didn't want to, but his mother made him come down to see me. As I tried to interact with them and dry myself off from the sweat, she was questioning me about why I was on a bike instead of in my car. And in avoiding the questions, I yelled something to the extent of, "I'm not here to answer questions, I'm just here to see my kids. But my son doesn't even like me because of you." Her mouth drops open like I've accused her of the worst crime ever. My son, my junior, 3 years old, one of the ones I just biked 10 miles in the heat of August just to see, jumps up and screams at me, "I don't like you because you yell at my mommy." I had to stop. The me in me wanted to say, "Who the f*** you think you talking to?" That was my natural reaction. So I stormed out, got on my bike, and went home. I cried, I got angry, and in that moment I decided that my kids were just probably better off without me. And I only share that because I know for a fact there's a father out there that's listening to this that thinks redemption is not possible. But the only way through that feeling is to challenge it. So that's what I did. And that's what I charge you to do. I had to apologize to my kids for how I spoke to their mother for 2 reasons. 1, because I realized my son saw himself as an extension of his mother at 3. So when I yelled at her, I was yelling at him, and he felt it. And as a leader, I had to respond to that, no matter how I felt. And 2, because I realized that for my son to be screaming at me like that, he had to be feeling some real emotions, because daddy don't play that. And I realized no matter what I tried to teach, he was learning through my actions to yell when he was upset, and that's what he did. So to build a healthy relationship with my son, I had to unlearn so many behaviors that even helped serve me and protect me in my past, coming from some of the most terrible neighborhoods that I grew up in. And 3, because it was wrong, but we aren't here to state the obvious, right? But in that apology, something magical happens. You'd open up the possibility for you to be better, and it helps your family and your children to see your humanity behind the many roles and hats that you wear. I apologized to my kids. I apologized to their mother, and I laid out a plan to be better. Did I yell again? Yes. Did I apologize again? Immediately. And laid out steps that I put in place to be better, to better handle my emotions. And promised them that I'd focus on getting 1% better every day. Fast forward to over 9 years of intentional work just with my son. Just the other day, this now 12-year-old boy told me I'm the best friend he could ever have or ask for. This boy models himself after me in every way, from haircut to drip to sports of choice and everything in between. And that's the direct result of intentional leading in an area of personal weakness. And you have the power to do that very same thing. But this wouldn't be the Leading While Bleeding podcast if that story ended with a fairy tale like that. As his father, there are still things I have to protect him from in life to mitigate the damage I've caused. My son is triggered when he's yelled at and he shuts down. I've seen it show up in school. I've even seen it show up on a sports field where his reaction to yelling is just so unnatural, and I can't help but notice that I created that damage. So what do I have to do? I have to talk to his teachers. I have to talk to his coach to let him know how they can get a better response out of my son. I've never taken the time to explain the reason why to people that I believe he responds that way, but that's just one example of how I have to deal with the repercussions of my actions daily and actively bleed while leading. I've had to apologize to my children for failed toxic relationships, moments where I was not as consistent, I wasn't as available, moments when I didn't show up for them, moments when my vices drastically changed the dynamics of their immediate circumstances. Again, we'll get more tea later. But I apologized each and every time and laid out a plan for how I would improve. I even had to apologize to my kids for chasing my dream at a time when they needed me the most. When I was right at the door and my writing career was gaining traction and I was in a different part of the country almost every month, they were happy for me, but sad they had to miss out on a part of me. And as a leader, I had to cut that off. So it's not just mistakes all the time that we have to rebound from, but everything our actions teach them need our attention, and sometimes it needs our apology. Now you're probably thinking, Robert A., your kids were young and my kids are older, so you don't understand. And as a father, I concede you are right, I don't understand. But as a son, I beg to differ. See, I met my father when I was 28, and if you've read my book, Fertile Concrete, not to plug it again, but seriously, every page reeks of the damage my father left me. It screams, you are the reason for my mother's problems and everything that came about in my life as a result of not having parents there to raise me. And as a tangent, real quick, so the first time I met him, I told him about writing and all that, and the second time I met him, I've only seen him twice. The second time he had my books on his shelf. It was a weird moment. It was the first time I ever felt fatherly love or thought, and I asked him if he read it, and he said, yeah, I read it, but we enjoyed ourselves, so I don't think he did, but I think he read it after that time, and then our dynamic just changed. I think he felt so much shame that like he didn't feel like I needed him or didn't feel like he could offer me anything as a father. And let me tell you, he couldn't be more wrong. But anyway. After 28 years of pain, we talked. He gave me his perspective. Sorry, hold on. I gotta take a minute.
2 days later.
All right, y'all, back. Thank you for bearing with me. Listen, I just want to say that this podcast is not something that's easy to produce. So please, if you're enjoying the content, like and subscribe to the podcast on whatever platform you listen to, and share this with someone that you think will benefit from the content. If someone sent this to you, it's because they love you. Let's continue. So we sat down at 28, we talked, he gave me his perspective, and even though I didn't agree with his decisions, and in retrospect, he shared that he didn't agree with them either, I was just glad to know it wasn't me. I was glad to hear that I wasn't the singular reason to this man never wanting anything to do with his family of 4 years with my mother and sister until I was born. It lifted something for me. It freed me in a way no action he could take would have ever accomplished. So as a son, as a 28-year-old son, now 37, I tell you, don't feed yourself narratives that you haven't tested and persevered through. Those kids love you, and I share this because I love you. Alright, y'all, I got one last thing for you before I let you go and set you off into winning your week, and I'll keep it quick, but I think it's just important to touch on it in this episode of Please Forgive Me. So the first part of the episode was to ask those kids, ask that family for forgiveness. Please, ask yourself for forgiveness. And I want to touch quickly on this because this is something that's been a journey for me, and it's been one of the most difficult things I've ever had to do in my life. If you've suffered from any type of mental illness or mental ailments and have been to therapy, you may know about something called dialectical behavioral therapy, or DBT. And within this practice, I found something very powerful that has helped me work toward the journey of forgiving myself. And I'll share one of those key concepts with you here as a foundation for building toward forgiving yourself. A tool called radical acceptance is something that I learned in therapy in my 20s, and it's helped me to build to where I am today in terms of knowing how to forgive myself and still be displeased in whatever area I messed up in. But because I am able to forgive myself most times, I can heal quicker and excel when responding to challenges, and you can too. So how does somebody forgive themselves? Well, it starts with eliminating the toxic habit of judging yourself. We judge ourselves and our mistakes mainly because of what people will think or how our families will respond to something, etc. And we start to tailgate our own bashing session that comes before the consequences of something that we may have done, hypothetically speaking. But here's where radical acceptance comes in. It's the deliberate choice, and it has to be a deliberate choice because our brains are not wired to naturally go down this path. But it's a deliberate choice to accept the present as it is without any judgment. So I'll give you a random example. An inmate that says on his first day in jail, I'm in jail for the next 30 days and I don't want to come back, is going to leave a much different person and in a much different place than an inmate that says on his first day, I can't believe they're going to give me 30 days in here for an open container. I hope that gives you a clear image on how acceptance of the present can change your future because it changes your thinking in the now. And that's really the only thing you can control, how you respond to right now. And it starts with practicing in the small moments. If you stub your toe, just say, this is painful. Okay, I ain't even that good yet, but you get the point, right? If there are any listeners out there that are familiar with DBT and radical acceptance in general, please feel free to drop some helpful and credible links for other viewers who are interested, as I am not a doctor or a licensed therapist in any way. I appreciate it. What helped me get to a point in my life where I could accept the things that came at me with some ease is that one day it just dawned on me out of nowhere that there is nobody on this earth that has been with me for 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and there is no one that was there for every single trial and circumstance that I've been in but myself. And you are the only one who has shown up to be with you in some of the toughest moments. And here's why that's important. I'm going to go about this in a roundabout way and tell you a brief story that relates to why that's important. I can tell you about a time in my life when I was 13 years old, when a man put a gun to my head and pulled the trigger. And it was kind of like a movie scene. I saw the gun just out of my peripheral as it pressed on my temple, and when he pulled the trigger, it clicked, and I shot my pants. It was a really loud fart, and I knew it was more than just fart that came out. And thankfully, I'm here to be able to tell you the story, but you probably laughed at that. Right? And it's funny. I can tell it in a funny way. But in that moment, it didn't feel funny. And even as I'm retelling that story, I can feel the anxiety building in my chest. And I'm safe in my office, talking to you. But my body doesn't know the difference. I even told this story to my kids, and my son got a good laugh out of it. And then one day, randomly, my son decided to prank me, unrelated to this story. And he jumps out of the pantry with a Nerf gun to try to shoot me. And when he saw my eyes, his face went from this joyful face to a face of fear because of what he saw on my face. I was frozen. I didn't see my son. I didn't see the Nerf gun. I just saw the end. And I know where those moments stem from, but he may not. And that's why it's important not to judge yourself in harsh moments, because you have the information as to why you respond the way you do in a certain situation. You have that information, and once you begin to start using that information to put yourself in better situations, it'll make not judging yourself a lot easier in this process of healing. Nobody has all of the details that go into who you are and the decisions you make. So when you're judging yourself, you're leaving out critical information about what happened that will always lead to your growth when you can reflect and adjust. And the second part to truly forgiving yourself is being in a healthy and loving relationship with yourself. And what does that look like for most men? Well, I'm still learning. But one vital piece of that is being intentional about showing up as the highest version of myself in each moment. I'm not saying I'm always at the highest, but I reach for the highest that I could possibly muster up in that moment, no matter how tough it may be. Each day I get stronger. But we will get into that in depth next week because I've already taken up enough of your time. So this is a part of the podcast that was formerly known as Ladies If You're Listening, but apparently my PR team thinks that's a bit antiquated. So we have renamed this portion of the show to If You Love a Dad. And that can be a brother, a father, a spouse, a son, a cousin. If there is a dad in your life that you love, try your hardest not to say, "I told you so," in moments of failure and weakness. Work beats on us. Society judges us, and sometimes seeking solace in our families are the only things that can allow us to be gentle with ourselves. So tuck away that "told you so" card. Replace it with a hug. You never know what it could do for him. Alright, and for my fellas, here's your challenge for this week. We talked about grieving, we talked about forgiving ourselves and asking for forgiveness for our children. Now here's the commitment that we need to make. Over the next 5 days, commit to being 1% better each day. Pick one area of your life that you want to focus on. If you want to meditate, wake up 10 minutes early. Start with 5 the first day. Second day, make it 10. And progressively stack on positive and productive habits that serve the higher version of you. Drop in the comments what you decided to work on if you feel so led. You can also share with me by emailing me at leadingwhilebleeding@gmail.com or following us on Instagram at the Leading While Bleeding Podcast. Thanks for joining us, y'all. This was fun. I appreciated it. I know it was heavy. I tried to make it as light as possible, and I hope I'll see you back next week. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and share this with someone that you think could benefit from it. Peace, y'all. Love you for free.
I love you, Dad.